First of all, Chairperson, I want to welcome the opportunity to speak on this financial resolution regarding the cost of fuel, a price spike which is causing significant distress and worry throughout households throughout the country. It's what people are talking about in the shops, it's what people are talking about in their homes, it's what people want action from government on. And I want to begin by first recognising the economic conditions we face, the source of the spike of prices we're experiencing and what government can and cannot do. In the past 2 years, we've lived through a global pandemic, a bout of post-pandemic inflation caused by a combination of supply chain bottlenecks and rise in energy prices, and now we see a war in Eastern Europe following the brutal and inhumane invasion by Russia of Ukraine. The consequences of this war, Chairperson, in terms of lives lost, in terms of ruined and disputed lives, cannot be put into words. And our primary duty is to provide whatever humanitarian assistance that we can to Ukraine and to provide all of the assistance we can to those fleeing Ukraine and coming here to this shore, seeking refuge, seeking solace. Sinn Féin fully supports the sanction regime that has been put in place to frustrate and to undermine Putin's illegal war. And the consequences of this war in economic terms are also immense. A massive energy and commodity producer is at war and has been effectively shut out from the global economy through sanctions. This, together with the inevitable disruption that has occurred, has resulted in huge spikes in energy and commodity markets. Increases in the price of wheat, fertiliser and even palm oil will have massive implications for citizens, for economies and for states throughout the world. Previously unseen spikes in the oil, gas and electricity market are already being felt along every link in the chain, from the wholesale market right down to the consumer. And we recognise the source of these price rises, and we recognise that no government can fully insulate or protect households for what may be about to come. We have never claimed such. But what we do know, what this House knows, what this party knows, is that governments, including this government, has a responsibility to do everything it can to mitigate the effects of these price rises on ordinary people, to use every single measure at their disposal to push the boat out to the very edge. And that is the priority of Sinn Féin. That is our focus this evening. That is what these amendments before us are about. It is what it is doing, what is possible, what is legal, what is permissible at this point in time. This financial resolution deals exclusively with excise, as it's been levied against fuel. But before I address this, it's clear that the government must deliver a comprehensive package of measures to assist and support households. As I said already, not 2 months ago, we faced post-pandemic inflation that was already reducing the spending power of workers and of families, and the government responded with an electricity credit which provided the same level of financial support to a millionaire, for example, as it did to a worker on the minimum wage. We needed targeted measures at that point, and we need them more than ever now. So yes, we need to see increases beyond what the government are talking about in terms of excise for petrol, for diesel and home heating oil, but we also need to see targeted cash cost of living payments delivered into families, to individuals who are on low and middle income households. We need to see real action from government for many of those 300,000 renters that are feeling the pinch ever so more now because of other factors, not only rent. So there has to be a rent cut and a freeze on rent increases for the next 3 years. We need to see support for families, particularly for those families with young children. That's why we can and we must cut the cost of childcare. And those who are dependent on the social welfare payments, those who have that as their only income, needs to see support at this point in time, and that is why we need to see social welfare increases. Fuel is what is on the tips of everybody's tongue at this point in time, whether it's heating your home or being able to get from A to B by putting diesel or petrol in your car. And we also need to expand the fuel eligibility criteria so that more and more people are able to benefit from the fuel allowance. But going back to the resolution that is before us today, and I welcome the fact that we're having this debate. Yesterday, when my party leader, Mary Lou McDonald, had raised this issue, the Taoiseach, it appeared, at least didn't indicate at that time that this was the proposal that was coming from. I heard the Minister, Paschal Donohoe, says whatever he does, we will just complain and say we didn't go far enough. The difference is we actually made the proposal first. We showed our cards before the Minister even suggested that he was going to cut excise duty on fuel and on diesel and petrol, and he has decided not to do anything in terms of home heating oil. And I will come back to that in a minute. The Minister did say that the reduction of a 25-cent reduction at the pumps in terms of diesel is not consistent with the Energy Tax Directive. That is not true. It is consistent with the Energy Tax Directive. Where it would fall foul is in relation to the rebate. And the Minister knows fine well what we need to do is not just ensure that hauliers and transport operators are able to benefit from that 7.5-cent rebate, but that all of society needs to be able to do that. So there is a way to do that, to make sure that everybody achieves that 25-cent if there was a willingness there. The Minister also said that is the edge of where he can go. That is not true. Hauliers could benefit through the reduction that we have put forward by 2.5 cents more than what the government are proposing, inclusive of the rebate. So there are ways to do this, but most importantly, millions of people who are depending on getting from A to B in relation to travelling in a car will be able to benefit from this reduction also. So not just transport operators, not just the hauliers. And that is why yesterday we had our homework done. We know exactly the limits and what you can do in relation to cutting diesel within the rules that exist at this point in time, and it is 25 cents. In relation to petrol, the government has far more scope to reduce in terms of petrol, but have decided not to. They have decided to reduce petrol not by the 34.1 cent that is permissible under the European Tax Directive, and the Minister has never suggested, in fairness to him, that they don't have the ability to go further. They have made a conscious decision not to give that additional support to those individuals, to those families that are hard-pressed. What Sinn Féin is saying, we need to push the boat out. We need to do everything that we can. And also bear in mind this fact, that we see at this point in time in many forecourts, we see prices of diesel. In my own home county of Donegal, in Letterkenny, it was $2.20 last night. God knows what it will be tomorrow morning. In Wicklow, we see prices of $2.32. That's a euro increase since this time last year. The state, on the back of that euro increase on the last year, the state takes about 20 cent additional VAT on every single litre. The Minister is only given back 15. That is not what the type of response that we need at a time of huge pressure and huge burden on families and individuals. This, Minister, is the straw that is going to break many, many people and many, many homes. And it is a particular issue, particularly in rural Ireland, where we do not have the same type of infrastructure that many in urban areas have. That you need that car to travel that longer distance, for that bit of commute, to get to your job, to get to the supermarket, to get to the shop, to get to the doctor, to get to the hospital. All of that means having to put diesel and petrol into your car. And the response from the government, and we knew this, the rumours were there, we knew this for a while. Minister Paschal Donoghue was going to wait till it hit €2. We knew yesterday morning, they were telling me, I was saying to Deputy McGrath, they were telling me in my own county that petrol is increasing by 20 cents overnight. It's happened in many other areas as well, because they have bought the fuel a number of days in advance. And this is when the reduction kicks in. What we need to do, Minister, is we need to reduce as far as possible. So there is an option here, and the option has been put by Sinn Féin before the House. Let's get petrol down to the cheapest level that we can currently at this point in time. That's only the starting. We need to do other things, but let's reduce it by 34.1 cent, not the 20 cent that the government are talking about. Let's get diesel down by 25.3 cent, not the 15 cent that the government are talking about. That's what is legally permissible. That's what we can do. That's what we should be supporting tonight. Is that enough? Absolutely not. It is not enough, because it still leaves families in situations in Blessington where they're nearly paying €2 for a litre of diesel. It leaves families in Donegal where they're paying $1.90 for a litre of diesel. That is not sustainable. And the reality is, we recognise, and I think the Minister alluded to it as well, that it is likely that the trends in relation to petrol and diesel are going to continue to increase. None of us know for sure in terms of where this market is going, but it is likely that that is where it is. That is why that can only be the first step in relation to our response. And I genuinely feel, and I've said it numerous times, that this government is out of touch. And I genuinely believe that if you understand the frustration and the impact that this is having on individuals, then you would have come up with a proposal that actually increased or decreased petrol to the greatest extent that you can, but you decided not to. You would have also it decreased the cost of diesel to the greatest extent that you can. You would have engaged with your European partners in relation to the VAT directive back when we were talking to you in committee back in September about this, but my understanding is that request was never made in relation to VAT in terms of energy and fuel products at that time. Again, it is always late in the day when the crisis is hitting, and I recognise that the war by Russia is driving up these prices. But we also need to recognise something separate to that, and that is that this time last year, the price of diesel was $1.30. In January, it had gone up by, or indeed in November, it had gone up 30 cents itself. Inflation and those costs were increasing. So we do need to look at that. We need to look at the exemptions that you can get out of the Energy Tax Directive, because we need a second package of supports to drive down and trying to keep the price of petrol and diesel at as a reasonable a cost as possible. Turning to home heating oil, and I listened to the Taoiseach, and it's not the first time, obviously, the Taoiseach got wrong, because we can ensure that we reduce the cost of diesel, petrol, more than is suggested. But in terms of home heating oil, the Taoiseach this morning said, well, there's no excise duty on home heating oil. In fairness, Pascal Donoghue hasn't made that statement, because we know excise duty is mineral oil tax. Indeed, the motion before us today is in relation to mineral oil tax, and in relation to kerosene, which is the most common used home heating oil, on 1,000 litres is 88.84. What the Minister wants us to vote on tonight, a vote that we've previously done, but we will again vote on it tonight, is for home heating oil to increase by over €20 on the 1st of May. That's the response that is before this House tonight, despite the fact that in the 1st of January you were buying already inflated costs. You were buying 1,000 litres of home heating oil at €700. Today you're being priced in Dublin at €1,880. Now, Minister, people haven't budgeted for that €1,000 increase. It simply hasn't happened. And I just don't understand how a government, how a cabinet collectively could say home heating oil is going through the roof, it's gone up about €1,000 in the last 12 weeks, and what we're going to do is nothing. We're not going to actually take away excise tax on it, which makes up about 100. By the 1st of May, will be in the region of €118. Currently, inclusive of VAT, it's about €95. Small portion of the overall increase, but a relief that can be provided tonight to those people who want to keep their home warm. No, the government didn't decide to do that. They didn't decide to say, let's see what we can do. They decided to say, we'll put forward a motion that will actually see that price increase by over €20 again on the 1st of May in the form of mineral oil tax, the carbon component of that. That is shocking. And if there was ever an example of a government collectively out of touch, and not just the cabinet ministers, but I assume the backbenchers that will come here tonight and decide to do absolutely nothing in terms of the skyrocketing price on home heating oil, not only that, let me correct myself, they'll do worse than that. They're going to vote again through an increase in that home heating oil in the next couple of weeks. Minister, that is the wrong direction. Now, I heard today, following on from the greatest hits where Eamon Ryan was telling us in rural Ireland that we should all share a car between the village, now he's telling us to slow down. Yeah. I'll tell you something, the people of Ireland are sick, sore and tired of a government who doesn't get it, who's out of touch and always does too little, too late. We need a government that responds to the real needs here and now. Because if we don't do that, are we just going to sit back and allow people to be paying $1.20, $1.30 at the petrol pumps for the next number of weeks? What is the impact that will have on families? What will the impact that will have on communities? That cannot be allowed to happen. So what we need to push the boat out in terms of what can be done tonight, and that is in the form of Sinn Féin's amendments. Reduce petrol to the maximum amount, reduce diesel to the maximum amount, get excise off of home heating oil, engage with your European partners to deal with the issue of VAT, to allow for other tools in this, and for exemptions that are allowed under the directive in relation to the Energy Tax Directive in terms of social issues. That is what's needed. That is what an active Minister for Finance, an active government that gets it and recognises the crisis that is happening, not visited at us by foreign actors, but here and being felt by individuals in the here and now. Minister, you should be supporting Sinn Féin's amendments to this legislation, and so should everybody else in this House.